All right, so we're back for another deep dive.
And today we're going even deeper into the Penrose Effect.
Yeah, things are really starting to get interesting, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And this chapter, chapter 4, The Descent, well,
It's a pretty fitting title when you think about what's been going on with the protagonist.
totally. Their whole world is kind of, falling apart.
Yeah, and they're starting to question everything.
Exactly, like even their own memories. Okay, ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'll start us off. By the fourth day, the whispers in my mind had become a constant presence, tugging at the edges of my thoughts, growing louder with every passing hour.
My reality was unraveling, each moment tinged with a sense of wrongness I couldn't ignore. Faces in the office were blurred, voices were distant, and every sound seemed to echo back at me, carrying with it an unsettling familiarity. I felt as if I were walking on the precipice of a great abyss, on the edge of something vast and dark.
I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal, but I didn't know how to face what lay beneath. The memory of the sterile room, the man in the white coat, and that haunting word Prometheus hovered just beyond my reach, a specter waiting in the shadows of my mind.
Lila's words from the day before lingered, their meaning growing clearer with each strange encounter. There were things that my mind, or something within it, didn't want me to remember.
And I knew instinctively that the memories pushing to the surface were dangerous, that they held a truth I might not be ready to face, but something within me was burning to know.
At lunch, I sat alone in the break room, staring at my reflection in the window. The face looking back seemed unfamiliar, like someone I had once known but forgotten.
I saw shadows beneath my eyes, the faint lines of worry and exhaustion etched into my skin. I was unraveling, each piece of myself slipping through my fingers, and yet the urge to remember, to confront the truth, grew stronger.
Lila entered the room, moving quietly, and took a seat across from me. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me with that knowing look, her gaze steady, filled with an empathy that only someone who'd been through the same could hold.
Finally she spoke, her voice soft but resolute. "You're close, you know. Closer than you think."
I looked up at her, my heart pounding. Close to what?
She leaned forward, her expression intense. "To breaking through, to remembering what was taken from you. But it won't be easy."
The mind doesn't let go of its defenses so easily, the Penrose Effect. It's more than just forgetting. It's a trap, a maze that keeps you circling the same thoughts, the same memories, but never reaching the truth.
"The Penrose Effect," I echoed, the words feeling both foreign and familiar. Why would anyone do that to someone? Why would they want to keep me from remembering?
Her gaze softened, and she hesitated before answering. Sometimes, people in power will do anything to protect their secrets, to bury truths that could threaten their control. They tell themselves it's for the good of others, that it's necessary. But in the end, it's about control, about keeping people like us in the dark.
"And Prometheus," I asked, almost afraid of the answer. "What does that name mean?"
Lila took a slow, steadying breath. Prometheus was the one who defied the gods, who stole fire to give to humanity. He was punished for it, bound and tormented for eternity.
In this case, Prometheus is you, the part of you that refuses to forget, that keeps clawing its way toward the truth, even when the world says it's better to leave it buried.
Her words lingered in the air between us, heavy with implication. I was both terrified and exhilarated, the weight of what she was saying settling over me like a lead blanket.
I didn't know how much I could trust her, but every instinct within me told me she was right, that she understood something I was only beginning to grasp. "There's something else," she said, breaking the silence. "Another force, pushing you to remember. It's like Hercules, the one who freed Prometheus from his chains."
The Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. When you start to notice things, patterns that keep appearing, symbols that won't leave you alone. It's your mind's way of trying to break free, of defying the barriers that were put in place to keep you in the dark.
I nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of clarity, as if her words were unlocking something deep within me.
So every time I see something familiar, something that seems like a pattern, that's my mind's way of trying to reach the truth.
"Yes," she said, "but you have to be careful. The closer you get, the harder it will fight back."
The Penrose Effect will do everything it can to keep you from breaking through. You'll feel like you're going in circles, like you're slipping deeper into the maze. But that's how you'll know you're close.
The room felt thick with tension, the weight of what she was saying pressing down on me. I felt both fear and a strange sense of purpose, as though I had been waiting my whole life to hear these words, to finally face the truth I'd been avoiding.
As we parted ways, Lila gave me a final, meaningful look. "You're not alone in this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper.
There are others who understand, who remember. We'll be here when you're ready.
The rest of the day passed in a daze, Lila's words echoing in my mind, filling me with a sense of urgency I couldn't ignore.
By the time I left the office, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets. I knew where I needed to go, even if I didn't fully understand why.
I made my way to the abandoned part of town, the derelict buildings looming in the darkness like silent sentinels.
There's a sense of familiarity here, a pull that guided me through the empty streets as though I were retracing steps I'd once taken in another life.
When I reached the alley where I had seen the graffiti, my heart sank. The wall was blank again, stripped of any sign of the word Hercules, the letters erased as though they had never existed.
But the feeling of something watching, something waiting, was stronger than ever. I stood there, alone in the quiet of the night, feeling the memories pressing against me, fragments slipping through the cracks in my mind.
I closed my eyes, letting the darkness settle around me and let the images come. I was back in the sterile room, the hum of machines filling the air, the cold metal of the chair pressing against my skin.
The man in the white coat was there, his face impassive, his gaze clinical and detached. I felt a shiver of fear, a primal urge to flee, but my body wouldn't move.
I was trapped, frozen, forced to watch as he leaned in closer. "You won't remember this," he said, his voice soft but filled with authority. "This is for your own good."
The words sent a jolt of panic through me, but the more I struggled, the heavier my limbs felt, as though I were sinking into quicksand. I could feel the memory slipping away, fading back into the shadows, but I fought to hold on to it, to remember every detail.
Just before the memory vanished, I caught a glimpse of something, a symbol, 3 interlocking circles drawn in the thick black ink on the wall behind him, and beneath it, a single word, scrawled hastily, almost like a warning: Prometheus.
I opened my eyes, gasping, the alley spinning around me as the memory dissolved, leaving me with a hollow ache. The Penrose Effect was tightening, the walls of the maze growing thicker, more impenetrable. But I could feel something else now, a defiance, a fire that refused to be snuffed out.
As I made my way back through the empty streets, the whisper drifted through my mind, soft but insistent: Prometheus.
The word pulsed within me, a heartbeat of rebellion, a reminder of who I was, of what I had lost. I was no longer just a prisoner, bound by chains I couldn't see. I was Prometheus, and I was breaking through, step by painful step, climbing an endless staircase that led deeper into the truth.
And as I walked, the world around me seemed to shift, the shadows pressing closer, as though the Penrose Effect itself were aware of my defiance, tightening its grip to keep me from escaping. But I wouldn't stop. I couldn't, because for the first time in years, I felt alive.
And that concludes Chapter 4, The Descent.
Wow, talk about a roller coaster, huh?
Seriously, I felt like I was right there with the protagonist, you know?
Like walking through that dark alley with them, totally.
Exactly. And those whispers, man, they're getting to me too, I swear.
Right. Like you can't help but feel the protagonist's anxiety and paranoia just building.
Yeah, the author does a fantastic job with that, with the atmosphere and everything.
Absolutely. So let's unpack some of this, shall we? Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we got to talk about Lila, right?
Oh, for sure. She's quickly becoming one of the most interesting characters in this story.
Definitely. And her connection to the protagonist, it's complex.
It is. Like, on the one hand, she's a source of support. You
Yeah.
know, someone who understands what the protagonist is going through.
Yeah, she's been there. She gets it.
Exactly. But then there's also the sense of mystery around her.
Like, what's her agenda, really?
Right. And can we fully trust her?
Good question. Because she's definitely holding back some information, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I get that feeling too. And the way she talks about the Penrose Effect, it's almost like she's, I don't know, almost reverent toward it.
Like it's some powerful force.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole connection to Prometheus.
That was a brilliant move by the author, don't you think? Tying the protagonist's struggles to this classic myth.
Totally. It adds this whole other layer of meaning to this story.
Like, who are the gods in this scenario? You know, who's really in control?
Right. Is it the people who implemented the Penrose Effect? The organization behind it all?
Could be. Or maybe it's something even bigger, something we haven't even seen yet.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. And then you've got Hercules thrown into the mix, too.
Another mythical figure, helping the protagonist break free from their mental chains.
Like, is that Lila's role? Or is it something else entirely?
That's what I'm dying to know.
Yeah.
And then there's the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon.
That was really interesting, wasn't it? The idea that our minds try to break free from suppression by showing us patterns, symbols.
Yeah, like those 3 interlocking circles.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if everything happens for a reason, you know?
It does. Like maybe those little things we notice, those coincidences, are actually our subconscious trying to tell us something.
I like that. It definitely gives the whole story this kind of fateful, almost mystical feel.
It does. And it makes you really pay attention to the details.
Oh, yeah. Every little thing could be a clue.
Exactly. And speaking of clues, what about that abandoned part of town? Creepy, right?
So creepy. That whole scene was like straight out of a horror movie.
It was. Those derelict buildings, the shadows, the feeling of being watched. It was like the setting itself was a reflection of the protagonist's mental state.
Totally. And the fact that the graffiti was gone, the word Hercules erased.
What do you think that means?
I don't know, but it definitely raises some questions.
It does. Like, who erased it? And why?
Right. Is someone trying to keep the protagonist from remembering, from connecting the dots?
Possibly. Or maybe it's the Penrose Effect itself, somehow manipulating reality.
That's a scary thought. Like, what if it's more powerful than we realize?
Oh, I think it definitely is. And then there's that memory of the sterile room.
Chilling.
Right? Oh, absolutely. That man in the white coat, his words, "This is for your own good."
So sinister.
Yeah, it really gives you a glimpse into the dark side of the Penrose Effect. Like, what lengths are these people willing to go to in order to control others?
Right. And the whole idea of memory manipulation, it's just terrifying.
It is. Makes you question everything you think you know about yourself, your past.
Totally. Like, what if our memories aren't even our own?
That's a heavy thought. And then, at the end of the chapter, you have this amazing moment of defiance from the protagonist.
Yeah, they're not giving up.
Not at all. They're embracing the name Prometheus, fighting back against forces that are trying to control them.
It's inspiring, in a way.
It is. Like, even in the face of all this darkness and uncertainty, there's still this spark of hope, this determination to break free.
I think that's what keeps us coming back to this story, you know? We want to see the protagonist succeed. We want them to find the truth.
Absolutely. And I have a feeling things are about to get even more intense in Chapter 5, The Ties That Bind.
Oh, I can't wait. I have so many questions, so many theories.
Me too. Like, who else is involved in this whole Penrose Effect thing? And what are their motivations?
Right. And will the protagonist finally start to get some answers?
Hopefully. But knowing this story, I'm sure there will be even more twists and turns along the way.
Oh, for sure. This deep dive is far from over.
So, The Ties That Bind, huh? That title just makes me think there's a whole network of people involved in this whole Penrose Effect thing.
Right. Like, how deep does this rabbit hole go? I mean, we've only really scratched the surface, haven't we?
Exactly. And who are these others that Lila mentioned? The ones who understand, who remember?
Yeah, that really piqued my curiosity. Are they allies? Or are they, like, even more deeply entrenched in this whole conspiracy?
Right. It's like, who can the protagonist trust at this point?
It's hard to say. I mean, even Lila, as much as she seems to be helping, she's still got her own secrets.
Yeah, she's definitely playing her cards close to the vest.
Totally. So going into this next chapter, I'm really wondering if we're going to meet some of these other people who've been affected by the Penrose Effect.
Me too. And what will their experiences tell us about the protagonist's own journey?
It's like, are their stories going to mirror the protagonists? Or will they offer a completely different perspective on what it means to have your memories manipulated?
Right. And will these connections, like, help the protagonist piece together what happened to them? Or will they just lead to more questions, more confusion?
That's the thing with this story, right? Every answer seems to just lead to more questions.
Absolutely. But that's what keeps us hooked.
It does. It's like this constant unraveling, this peeling back of layers, and you're never quite sure what you're going to find underneath.
Yeah, and it makes you think about, like, the nature of truth itself, you know?
Oh, totally. Like, if our memories can be so easily manipulated, how can we ever be sure of what's real?
Exactly. And what does that mean for our sense of identity? Like, if our past isn't what we thought it was, who are we?
Deep stuff, man. And it's not just philosophical, right? I mean, this whole story has these real-world implications, too.
Oh, yeah. Think about all the ways that information is controlled and manipulated in our society, you know?
Propaganda, fake news, the whole works.
Right. It makes you wonder what's real and what's not, like on a much larger scale.
Exactly. And the idea that someone could be controlling our memories, that's some next-level stuff.
It is. It's like the ultimate form of manipulation.
So going back to the story, I'm also curious to see how that whole symbol of the 3 interlocking circles plays out.
Oh, for sure. The thing is like haunting me at this point. It keeps popping up everywhere.
Yeah, it's definitely not just a random design choice. It has to have some deeper meaning.
Right. Like, is it a symbol of the Penrose Effect itself? Or maybe the organization behind it all?
Or maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe it's a clue to the protagonist's past, something they need to remember in order to break free.
That's an interesting thought. Like, maybe it's a repressed memory that's trying to surface.
Could be. And that brings us back to the whole idea of the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, right? Those patterns that keep appearing, maybe they're trying to tell us something.
It's almost like our subconscious is trying to break through to show us the truth.
Exactly. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the ties that bind reveals.
I'm on the edge of my seat, that's for sure. Well, folks, we are at the end of our deep dive this week. But the questions, the theories, the speculation that never ends. Right.
Not a chance. And hey, keep those theories coming. We love hearing from you all. So until next time, keep diving, keep questioning, and keep your eyes peeled for those 3 interlocking circles. They might just lead you to the truth, too.
See you next time.